Hey everybody, good Monday afternoon. We're rocking and rolling. I had an amazing weekend at the Defend Our Monuments rally in downtown Colorado Springs. I'll talk about that in a later stream, but I've got a really important guest today and a couple of really important topics that intersect. One of them, of course, cancel culture gone wild. And as you know, especially over the last 2 weeks, as the George Floyd mania has escalated, there is no safe space for pretty much anyone in the public eye or the private eye, for that matter. We've got Gone with the Wind, which is now canceled, Paw Patrol, Confederate flags, Confederate statues, Union General statues, Union General monuments, Christopher Columbus, the Lincoln Memorial, Thomas Jefferson, who was tossed off of a high school platform pedestal in Portland last night. And all of these things could not happen without a conspiracy of lies that goes on every day in both corporate media and social media. Increasingly, websites and blogs have become the echo chamber for repeating lies over and over and over again. I have a lot of experience with this, of course, experience that goes back decades. And as many of you know, I was really one of the progenitors of the first generation of conservative blogs. And a couple of my nemeses are also the nemeses of my guest, Carson Griffith, who is suing the Daily Beast. She is a former editor of Gawker. I'm going to bring her in now. Hey, Carson.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
It is good to talk to you. And as I often tell many of my guests on this live stream, hashtag Malkin Live, I wish we had met under better circumstances.
I know. I would have loved to met you in person or in a different situation or when I wasn't in a lawsuit.
Yeah. So I want to talk about Gawker a little bit and my own short history, a brief Cliff Notes history, because back in 2006, there was a staff writer at the time named Alex Perrine, a little snot-nosed, know-it-all smear merchant, who shared a photoshopped picture of me in a bikini. And it was actually not a bad picture. And given that I have many stretch marks from my 2 pregnancies, I was actually flattered to see this supposed spring break picture from when I was allegedly a college student. And this was somehow meant to humiliate me, embarrass me. They ran it under the headline Michelle Malkin Gone Wild. And what they had done is basically filch 2 college kids' Flickr account pictures and then photoshopped my head on it. And this picture it gets circulated to this day. I saw it on Twitter last week. Again, somehow meant to degrade me and diminish my credibility. And I did not have the wherewithal or the stamina or the attention span or energy to sue them. I had no recourse. The college girls whose Flickr accounts were stolen had no recourse. And when we asked them politely to take these things down because they were false, the men in charge of Gawker at the time laughed at us. So you can imagine that when Hulk Hogan came around with his good lawyers and drove Gawker into the ground, yes, I was cheering and raising my champagne glass. So bring us like into that. So that's post, well, what was that? 2016.
When Gawker went to the ground.
Yep, right.
First, let me explain, because I feel, when the knowledge of what happened to me and also my lawsuit came out to the public, people were a little confused. You hear there's a Gawker editor suing the Daily Beast. People get really confused because a lot of people's first response is they're eating their own. And I want people to know first, when I was hired to, resurrect Gawker, it wasn't to resurrect what people first think of as Gawker. It wasn't to resurrect the Gawker who's going to put Michelle Malkin's head on someone else's bikini body. Because my background isn't in necessarily those type of things. I was actually poached from Architectural Digest as their entertainment editor. So yes, I was working with celebrities, but it was to go into their home, to work at movies, covering movie sets, to think of new creative ways to work with celebrities, influencers, artists, things like that at a prestigious magazine. And before that, I had been writing for the New York Times Style section. I had been working at Wall Street Journal covering charities. So my boss at the time was at BDG, and he owned a number of different websites, and he went and bought basically the skeleton bones of Gawker at auction by accident, because no one else wanted this, website with a bad reputation.
Yeah.
And he bought it for something like $1.4 million, which is nothing, and bought the archive of it. And we didn't know each other at the time, but I had an excellent reputation in media. And so he met with me, and I didn't want to work there at first for exactly the reason you spoke of. Gawker had hurt a lot of people. It had hurt a lot of public people. It had hurt a lot of private people. And I didn't want to be a part of that. And so when he approached me first, I said, if you're looking for an editor who is going to do those things again to people, who's going to out private people, who is going to defame them, who is going to, destroy people's careers, you have the wrong girl. But if you're looking for someone who is going to, shape the cultural story, then I can help you with that. And so I got on board, and I was looking to, start something different, be creative and quirky and things like that. So I was hired to make it a better publication. And what happened was that didn't happen at all. I was there for 2.5 months before we hired any new writers. We hired 3 writers, and there was a publisher and some sales team. Two of the writers, and there was a senior editor. 2 of the writers were very unhappy with me. They were not, they did not think that I should have been in place, because they wanted to make it like the old writer, the old Gawker. And some old things that information about me came out, some tweets that I put out supporting Donald Trump in 2010 when he was Apprentice. I had interviewed him when he was on The Apprentice. Some jokes about, not even inappropriate jokes, but jokes with my roommates about a maid on Gossip Girl. I did not have a maid. I was 23 with 3 roommates, toward a maid, but they said it made me sound classist and elitist. And also I was a registered Republican, and they were very unhappy when HR refused to fire me. They made up some things defaming me. And when they quit and went to the Daily Beast, and the Daily Beast wrote a defamatory article. So that is what put me where I am today, suing the Daily Beast.
So Trump supporter and registered Republican, 2 strikes. And so you had been making your living as a mainstream, legit journalist, young woman in New York City.
Well, I love that you called me a young woman, because I'm not that young anymore. But I had made my living for 11 and a half years as a journalist. My boss at the time had even called 7 or 8 references of people who had worked below me or above me. And, my accusations from my former employees and the Daily Beast were that I was racist, homophobic, and transphobic due to, they claimed, things I had said in the office and Slack conversations. And my references were 2/3 all people who were, I think the correct term is BIPOC, or people from the LGBTQ community. So, and also the 2 women in the office knew, we had multiple conversations. I had interviewed people all from these communities. They were, particularly aimed at, they did not feel I was the correct person to be running this website. So, flat out, they didn't like me.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are going to be able to relate to your situation. And how are you supposed to be able to communicate if you know in advance that Slack messages, emails, all of these things can be leaked and used against you and misinterpreted to to defame you and destroy your career, because that's what it looks plainly like what happened to you.
Well, Michelle, I actually would have been completely fine with these emails and Slack messages being leaked if they had been leaked in their entirety. Right. What they did was leak one or two choice lines to try to make me look like the person they were trying to frame me to look like. And even then, it was really they really had to twist them to even do that at the degree. But with the help of the Daily Beast, they were able to do that because, with the framing, and that's where my lawsuit is able to move forward. The thing with what the Daily Beast does with public figures, it's really hard to sue a public figure.
Yes.
Which you probably know. You have a lot of friends who, if they want to do this, there's so much leeway in our legal system for the defense of free speech, which I am all for fact-based journalism and free speech, because that's how so many things move forward. That's how we're all knowledgeable, but it's very hard. As a private figure, though, we have a lot more room to sue publications, especially when they get things wrong, like they did for me. However, publications think that private figures like me won't have the means or know-how to move forward with these lawsuits. And that's when the bullying begins. I mean, I don't have the means for a lawsuit, but I do have the know-how to an extent. I filed a lawsuit on the last day of my statute of limitations with only 45 minutes to go, basically because I was just fed up. I was fed up with what they were doing. I sent very polite legal letters to them, just asking for a retraction and apology. That's it. I was not looking for a payday. I was not looking for revenge in any way. I was just looking for a way to, get on with my life. And after a year, it was very difficult. I received thousands of mean tweets, of doxing, they put my address online. I received rape threats and death threats over this. And, after 6 months, my employer did stand behind me, but we had to close the project over this. And therefore I was unemployed too. And I really just wanted to move on with my life. I do have a health condition that had been controlled for years. I'm epileptic. And because of all this harassment, I started having seizures again. And what happened was the Daily Beast lawyers were so rude about this that I ended up filing a claim by myself in New York County Supreme Court. And the thing is, this isn't just me. This happens to so many people. It happened to you. It's happening to tons of public and private figures. And this is a result of a combination of fake news and cancel culture. And, I know that this is a thing that happens a lot to conservatives and people on the right a lot too. It's happening to everyone. It's crazy. As we're seeing it so much now as we're moving forward, that as someone who's a journalist and has seen it go on, I woke up one morning and was like, I can no longer see the line between fact-based journalism and biased blogging. And that's not okay. It needs to be controlled.
Yeah, that is such a good point, because there has been such a blurring of lines. And you look now and you're right. I would say that from the beginning of the Trump administration, the ratcheting up of these kinds of witch hunts against conservatives has been really at a high pitched fervor. But especially over the last couple of weeks, you see, there was a Pulitzer Prize winning editor from the Philadelphia Inquirer who was thrown under the bus for daring to run a piece about property destruction of historic monuments and buildings under the title, I think it was Property Matters Too, or something like that.
Building Matters Too. And I'm not sure if you're aware of this, Michelle. He actually, from the time he started, he diversified the newsroom 50% more. Yeah. So he's giving people exactly what they're asking for. But for one headline, you're going to fire him when who's going to come in and do, these journalists are saying we want to diversify the newsroom. He gave you exactly what you wanted, but you're going to fire him. Yeah. And, they're firing off a lot of journalists and people who are giving them exactly what they want. But, because it's just not enough. You need
Yeah.
to look at people's body of accomplishments and what they've done. And
Right.
I felt that's exactly what they did to me. When I was when I was first starting as a journalist at the New York Daily News, I had a partnership with GLAAD to make sure that was getting in. But now you're calling me homophobic and transphobic. I mean,
Right.
I don't understand. You need to, and it's another thing is people talk about allyship so much.
Mhm.
And these two women who were, white women were doing things to forward their own careers instead of actually being allies to the communities that were helping them.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about the Daily Beast's role here, because they have played a critical role in amplifying smears against people who go against the grain, who are dissenters or dissidents. And they did that to me last fall. And again, I'm not bringing these up, in some sort of like, kind of self-centered way. It really is because these are instructive. This is the template. And a lot of times it is an alliance between establishment left forces and establishment right forces. That's how it worked at the Daily Beast. But the point is that they employ supposed journalists who are essentially tattletales, right? That's their job. Oh, here, I've dug up something from somebody's history from 5 or 10 or 15 years ago. Fire them. Like, what actually happened to enterprise journalism or investigative journalism? It's like one big middle school water cooler.
Absolutely. And one of my I'm actually suing one of my 2 former employees as well, Maya Kosoff. She recorded one of the HR conversations where she was reporting me, and they turned that into a source. Now, did they use any of the parts that were inaccurate during that? Absolutely not. Same with and also the lawsuit they're moving forward with. There are multiple things when I got the reply claim that contradict things in their report even. And it's, these things, they're very one-sided. And I don't know if I mentioned this, the reporter who I am suing, Maxwell Tani, he's their media reporter, is best friends with my former employee, Maya Kosoff, to the point where they celebrate all their birthdays together, throw each other birthday parties. They buy each other gifts. They spent New Year's together. They used to work together at Business Insider. And if anyone tries to argue that that's not bias or favoritism, then they have no ethical journalism standards.
Yeah, this is gross. I mean, you see this with a lot of the New York and DC media. I don't, it's incestuousness is not the right word for it, but I do think like the junior high school atmosphere encapsulates it. And Daily Beast is very left wing, and Gawker, before you came on, we all know the history of that.
Well, I wasn't even able to launch it, so who cares about that?
Right, exactly. But you see this as well with Conservatism Inc. publications too. And, a lot of times they're working with each other. The Washington Examiner is like this. There's, maybe there's like a tenth of the papers dedicated to journalism, but most of it is about digging something up in somebody's past and then trying to cancel somebody. They've done this with a lot of young, conservative, dissident journalists, and there's no accountability. That's why I thought it was so important to talk to you, because you are in an elite family of people who are actually trying to do something about it. I mean, how many of us have been tweeting and complaining on TV until we're blue or red in the face about not being able to fight the censors or stop the bias? And you are doing it. And I'm urging people to go to suefakenews.com. You have a crowdfund that's just launched, and your complaint is also online.
Yeah, you can read my original complaint. Now, lawyers will be amending it because I'm not a lawyer, and I don't try to be. I know I didn't go to law school, but I do want to say it's not easy. The Daily Beast has like a big law firm supporting them, and they also my former employee has lawyers from the 3 pro bono lawyers from big law firms helping her, which I assume the Daily Beast helped her get, which I'm very confused about because they're from the Freedom of Expression Writers Committee or something along those lines in DC. And she wasn't, this isn't a source situation or a freedom of expression situation or anything like that. So that is something that we'll be looking into as well. But it's not easy. It hasn't been easy. And, you know, something that happened earlier that you and I talked about briefly, but I do want to touch on, you know, they discovered that I was going to be speaking with you today. And the crowdfund, which was set up by a very young, nice guy who wants to be a writer. I didn't know him previously. He reached out. But they contacted me because I was going to be speaking with you, and began to harass me again because of that. Now, I'm unemployed. I'm dealing with a health issue that I spoke to you about earlier. I'm not a public figure. I'm a private figure. I've barely done any press over this lawsuit. You know, I spoke to the New York Post about it, which Fox News picked up, and I gave them a statement. And then now you. So I've really just been trying to live like a healthy, normal life. And they reached out to me. Will Sommer there reached out to me, and I replied, and I copied their attorneys on it. It was all by the book. And I said, this is off the record unless you print this statement in full. And it was basically like, and I said, please do not harass me. I'm trying to live a healthy, normal life. If you print this story, I am going to have to include it in future litigation. And they came back and said, you know, we do not agree to print this in full, blah, blah. They continue to harass me to this day. And that's what kind of publication they are. I do not understand it. I have no platform. I am a private figure, and they are scared. They are scared of this lawsuit. And that's why they are doing this, because I have a real lawsuit. I've had so many lawyers look at my lawsuit and be like, this is a real lawsuit. So if I can get to that courtroom, I do stand a chance. I am a private figure, and I know they are scared. And that's why they hired such a big law firm. I just need to get there. That's the thing.
And how you get there is to raise money for your lawsuit. And I want to repeat again for people, go to www.suefakenews.com. You know, I've done my best to try and raise money for the other few in your unfortunate, I mean, it's a club that you wouldn't choose to be in, right?
No, not at all. Like, I mean, I'm not a litigious person at all. I've never sued anyone before. I was hoping I never would. And I've spoken with so many nice lawyers who have been like, oh, I would love to represent you in the future if I didn't have so many cases, or if defamation was my specialty, or like all these other things. I'm like, I hope you never have to represent me in the future, because I don't ever want to be in a lawsuit again. And nor did I ever expect to be. But if I have to represent all these people, I truly believe that both cancel culture and fake news, we need to move in a different direction, because otherwise people are just not going to be getting the information they need. And, I think, like I said, I think free speech and fact-based journalism are important. I'm not saying that we need to totally get rid of journalism, because how else would we get information? I mean, you understand that. You've been in reporting. These are important things, but the pendulum needs to swing.
Yeah. The way I see your case is that Hulk Hogan was to Gawker. Oh, by the way, your audio is a little bit, if you could move it. It's like touching something.
Is that better?
Yeah, much better.
Thank you.
The way I see your case is that Hulk Hogan is to Gawker what you as a private citizen may be to the Daily Beast. That is why they're so threatened. That is why they're preparing, I'm sure, some hit piece right now to smear you with guilt by association. That is one of their standard tools in their toolkit to try and silence people who do threaten them. And I think it's extraordinary. I really urge people to read your complaint, because the fact that you did this pro se is so impressive, and impressive to the lawyers that you've talked to, and me as a lay citizen who's had to try and go through these cost benefit calculations time and time again over the last 25 plus years, wondering whether I could in fact try and get some accountability from the people who've lied about me so often over the years, many of them who were former or current journalists from some of the entities that are involved in smearing you. And just so people know, we'll give them like a little bit of a crash course, refresher course here. If you're a public figure, the way that our libel and slander and defamation laws work now, you have to prove malice, and which is incredibly hard to do. And you have to have the wherewithal financially to go through the discovery process if you can even get there. And then, of course, you have to have the false statements, and then you have to show economic damages as well. What are the standards for a private citizen filing this kind of complaint?
So I have to prove gross irresponsibility and negligence, which is a lot easier to prove than malice because I'm a private citizen. Now, especially negligence is super easy to prove. So I'm not overly concerned about that, or really even gross irresponsibility, especially because I actually have friends of theirs who I tried to hire who fall both into the LGBTQ and BIPOC categories. But there are multiple other things that will be very easy for me to prove that what they're saying is totally untrue. And just the journalistic ethical standards and the way they framed me. We did get their response back, and I don't think it's going to be a problem at all. Now, the New York courts, obviously, as you know, are very liberal, but my case is very strong. And also just my behavior over time has been reflected of the opposite of what they're trying to accuse me of. Additionally, it's one of the things that they're, like you had mentioned, damages. I have a bevy of economic damages and also just medical damages, and that list. There's a lot of cases that people don't try to prove, like the different types of damages. We have a long list of that for me. And also, once my 2 employees left, my employer actually hired an outside law firm, Goodwin Procter, to do an external investigation. And after 3 months, they proved me innocent. So I've actually been through discovery. They went through all of my emails. They went through all of my Slacks. They went through it, and they put me through a 3-hour cross-examination or an interrogation process. So I've done it all. They did it all with all of my employees and also all of my coworkers. They have a huge file on this, and they showed that I am entirely innocent. So once we get to discovery, if and when, it seems like when, I'm fine. I want to go through discovery.
Right.
I want to put the Daily Beast through discovery. I want to see their emails. I want to see all the things they did to me wrong. I'm excited for that. I've done all that already. And after the email the Daily Beast sent to me today, I mean, they're accusing me of things that aren't true again. Bring it on. Let's go. And I want to do it for everyone else that the Daily Beast has done these things to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a real David and Goliath battle. Do you have any support from anyone you've worked with in the journalism community, or are they just too afraid to even show their faces lest they be the next target of the mob?
I will say I was always very beloved in the journalism community, and which was wonderful. I wrote for so many publications. I did a fair amount of television, and I had a great career. I really loved it. I think about like 3/4 of those people have fallen off, which is really sad for me to see. But there are about 1/4 of the people still there. Now, how publicly they support me is to different extents. Some of them are surprisingly still very public. Some of them not so much. Now, some of that is just because, they aren't on social media or things like that. And I understand that. Some of them are just because I think it's because you said they're scared. They're scared what's going to happen to them. And I don't hold that against them at all, because I don't want what happened to me to happen to anyone. It was an awful experience. It really was. It took a toll on my mental health, my physical health. And I don't like to play victim culture. It's even taken a while. It took a year for me to even speak about this. I didn't tell my parents about it, my family, for 6 months. I was really disappointed in some people. I
Yeah.
really was. I was really surprised and honored by some people who stood by me and some people who came out of the woodwork after years and years and years. And some people I got to meet, like you know, there are, you will, I think, people always say that you meet people, support people who come out. I've some of the messages I've got are wonderful. And I think that this may lead me to where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, yeah, I feel that way. The journey's been a long one for me over the years, and my kids always roll their eyes when I tell them everything happens for a reason. I really do think that. I want to talk to you more because you've had such a long storied career in journalism. What is wrong with journalism? How did we get to this point of this toxic intersection between fake news and cancel culture? Is it J schools? Is it something else that's going on?
I think I started out really young, and I had a great boss. He was a great mentor, and he always taught me, you look for the facts, not for the story. So you start reporting, and you have an idea of what you're looking for, but if that idea is wrong, that's fine. You're not trying, you're not looking for a target on someone's back. If the story comes out so totally different, that's fine. But I think what people do is they go out aiming for something, and no matter what, they'll go out after that. They'll look for anything they can, because it's opinion. It's right now it's opinion-based journalism, right? Mm-hmm. We're not looking to find the truth. Now, I'm not saying that's everyone, because there are still some good reporters out there and journalists. Now, I think people are trying to change the systems right now. They're not looking for the truth. And I think that's also because we're letting people who have not lived life control what we do a lot of the time too. Mm-hmm. We're letting people who are 22 to 27 run journalism and run society. Now, I never could have imagined that. And also, we would have been screwed if in the newsroom we let me as a 23-year-old stamp around and run it. I didn't know anything. I mean, when I got my first editor job at 26, I used to call my former editor all the time and be like, what do I do? These people they need life experience. They should be listened to, of course, but at the same time, they should not be running the show. I mean, and I think a perfect example of that is my two former employees. HR asked them, no matter what you decide to do, because they were offered options, other jobs in the newsrooms, things like that. Do you want to sit down with Carson and talk to her? Conversation. They said, absolutely not. After they lobbed these accusations at me, they refused to speak to me ever again, because they knew what they were doing was untrue. But people have this mindset of cancellation over conversation. And that's not getting us anywhere in life. And in fact, it's getting us to some really shitty journalism.
Yes.
Some people you're never going to change their mind. And that's just the situation. But at the same time, if we're not having conversations with each other about anything, if we're just lobbing accusations at each other, it's going to push everyone further and further apart. Yeah. And it's going to push us further and further from the truth as well.
You have intellectual and emotional toddlers that are in charge of journalism now. I think that is exactly right. And oh, by the way, the thing is scratching again.
I'm sorry.
No worries. I think about my mentors from a quarter century ago. And yeah, they were straight old white men who had blue collar backgrounds and didn't go to J school. and they were unfiltered, and they had real life experience. And they were from the old school. They smoked. They had Jack Daniels bottles in their file cabinets and drawers. And they didn't have an agenda. So the fact that you have so many of these newsrooms now that are going to be turned over to SJW tattletales, what future does that hold for anyone who has center-right views? I mean, so you there's no way to be able to get a job at Architectural Digest, or well, look at the New York Times op-ed page, right? They fired the editor there because he dared to publish a piece that, that actually reflected, the attitude of the majority of American people on what was it? It was on the use of the military, right?
It was like
call riots.
Tom Cotton's opinion piece,
right?
On, I just don't understand why anyone would not want to read a publication that has all viewpoints reflected. Like, because that's the thing. I think, I forget who said it, but it was, a differing opinion, even if you want to argue it, you should want to be reading it because it makes you think and it gives you something to argue about, doesn't
right.
it? It's if a paper is everything you're thinking and everything you're agreeing about, why you're not learning anything. It's
right.
Just, to me, I want to be educated, and education to me is a lot of things I agree with and furthering my own point of views, but also a lot of things that I can say, well, I don't necessarily think this is right, but why does someone else?
Yeah.
I like to surround myself with all types of people, not just people who are going to be yes men.
Yeah, well, that is true diversity of thought, which is allowed less and less now. I mean, the Overton window has shrunk so exponentially over the last 5-10 years. So yeah, getting back to this question, if you are center right and you want to have a mainstream journalism job, you can't get hired by, non-political outlets. You can't get hired by Conservatism Inc. outlets. I mean, in a lot of ways, they collaborate either explicitly or implicitly with the Daily Beasts of the world. That's what happened when YAF leaked to the Daily Beast when they tried to smear me and cancel me last fall, right? And then, of course, if you try to make a living online, right, one poorly or indelicately chosen word, and you will be canceled off of YouTube, Facebook. Of course, that's why we have other folks like Laura Loomer and Gavin McInnes who are suing many of the entities that smeared and deplatformed them. So where do you go? I mean, you are unemployed now, and you have been so defamed and slandered. How are you? Have you thought of changing careers? Are you going to try and make it?
Well, I'm not quite sure. I've had a lot of interesting offers for talking to people to go into other fields and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're very preliminary. I'm not quite sure, but I don't think right now at the state of journalism that is necessarily the right thing for me to get back into.
Yeah.
But I think journalism is interesting right now. And I think also the thing is people aren't necessarily being honest about the state of journalism, because I hear things like, to get for Vice to get up views, they have a partnership with Breitbart. Is that true? But also, is that very honest of them? Because then that would mean, why aren't they acknowledging then that the right is the majority? I think, to post the Wall Street Journal, things like that, people are now starting to beat down on them. How long is it until they start moving further and further left?
Yeah.
I just think there needs to be more publications that are willing to show both sides of the spectrum. But then again, can that get either side? Will that get either readers? Because people are not willing to really read anything that doesn't reflect 100% what they're thinking. So I have no idea where things are going to go right now. In terms, it seems people are actually going away from media in general and going towards podcasts, or going towards videocast, or going towards things with 1 to 3 voices of people that they like, who are people who are willing to talk to other people and things like that. It seems to be that's the general trend.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the media, you're audio again.
Got
better?
It?
Yeah.
I don't know why it keeps doing that.
Yeah. Just to recap for people who might have joined late, Carson Griffith is a former Gawker journalist who is suing the Daily Beast for lying about her, calling her all sorts of terrible names and epithets, the usual ones: racist, homophobic, transphobic, the whole 9 yards, taking email work conversations completely out of context, and you filed a complaint pro se. What was the date that you filed that?
So January 23rd, 2020. It was this past January. But I also want to clear up the fact that it was a whole year after the incident actually happened. So right now we're seeing a lot of this kind of reckoning in media right now. 2 weeks ago, I think there were 5 or 6 people in media who quote unquote got canceled. But what happened to me a year and a half ago was it happened before everything that was going on, kind of the big cancellation in media. But, as you know, particularly Michelle, cancel culture has been around for a long, long time. And the big rise in it was in 2012. And the term cancel culture actually kind of hit the mainstream in 2016. So I say, I was canceled in media before it got really big this past month. But cancel culture has been around for a long time.
Yes, that is true. And you are one of the few people, as I've been mentioning during this live stream, who is actually fighting back. And I am urging people, yes, I'm urging people to go to www.suefakenews.com. As we mentioned, if you came in late as well, the Daily Beast is watching. Hello, all you people. Hanging on every word, of course, and preparing to do what they do, which is to smear, to lie, and to prevent people from finding out the actual truth of what you're doing by fear mongering and by throwing up even more smoke bombs, smoke screens. And so I want people to actually read the complaint that you authored on your own, not a lawyer, a layperson. And I hope that it gives people inspiration who have been similarly targeted. I mean, I think you're like leading a Spartacus type movement here, and that's why people are afraid.
And there's the email address on there. So there is a really nice young man who put together the crowdfund, and he is going to sort through the emails. And if you want to email me personally, you can. The email is right on the website. And
can you say it now, and I'll put it on the banner?
Sure. It's info@ suefakenews.com. So Perfect. If you send me a nice email, and if you want to reach me personally, I've gotten a lot of emails on LinkedIn. A lot of people have reached out to me who've read the story. There's 2 stories. There's not much. I haven't done much press or anything on this yet, despite the Daily Beast keep trying to write really mean things about me, even though I haven't really done anything. But if you want to email me personally, a nice note or questions or anything like that, or if you've had your own experience with this and have a question about filing pro se, like I said, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm happy to talk to you. Like I understand the situation. Just feel free to reach out. Honestly, I'll try to get back to you. And the person who put together, he's a very nice young guy who's just looking to hopefully further his journalism career.
So email info@suefakenews.com. People can also follow you at suefakenews on Twitter.
Yeah. And I'm not personally running that, but I see it, obviously.
Yeah. And that's just a good clearinghouse for your case, as well as all these related cancel culture and fake news stories, which are like, there's a hook for your lawsuit pretty much every single day,
Of course.
Right.
I mean, I see it. And it's, like I said, it's happening to everyone. I mean, the thing with media right now is, people are calling it the reckoning, because the past 6 people, and this is why people kept saying like, oh, they're eating their own, is, the 6 people in media were very woke journalists who just got like canceled, got thrown. One of the editors, it was a photo from 2004 that he got fired over.
Oh, I missed that one. Oh,
and it's, people don't understand. It's not like, it's a very heightened thing on the right and for conservatives, but this is happening to everyone, and it's going to. It's not. It's a like cancel culture and fake news is it. People can target whoever they want if we don't control it. And it's just going to eat our journalism. And no one's going to get the truth.
Yeah, I think you're right. Cannibalism is a good metaphor of what's going on here. I mean, I think everybody is living in terror at this idea that certain self-appointed thought police and speech police are going back and relitigating your entire history. And the longer that you've been around, of course, the more record you do have. And this is why your lawsuit is important, because it could definitely set a precedent to stop the mob. The only way to stop a mob and to cancel culture is to fight it. And that is what you're doing. Do you have any last thoughts before we close out here?
No, I mean, like I said, feel free to reach out to me. I hope everyone visits the website, and I'm looking forward to things getting back on track. The courts have been closed because of COVID in New York City, especially, which is where I normally live. And Michelle, I really appreciate everything you're doing to support these two particular movements. Again, thank you for having me join you and for promoting it on your huge following for Twitter. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to keep you updated and your followers updated.
Definitely. We will keep tracking this and catch up with you. Stay safe, stay well, hang in there and hang tough, Carson.
Thank you.
You bet.